Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your Lunch Break Live. My name is Ivana Harinkyu if you're new here. And if you are not new here, thank you so much for coming back. Today is Thursday, August the 25th, and today we're going to be talking about what is on a lot of people's minds, what a lot of people are searching for right now, and that is student loan forgiveness. Now, if you were paying attention yesterday to the news or to the internet, you might have seen that President Joe Biden did announce a plan for forgiving certain student loan debt. Now, there's a lot of nuances here. There's a lot that is kind of in the fine print. So today I am joined by Chandra Scott. She is the executive director of Alabama Possible. Alabama Possible is a group that focuses on removing barriers to prosperity. And Chandra, I'll let you get in a little more depth as well about what your organization does. But first of all, let's talk a little bit about this debt, what people need to know, and what exactly this announcement really means for the average Alabamian.
Yes, so first, thank you so much for having me on today during the lunch live break. But here's the thing. So many notices have come out about this debt removal or debt cancellation process, and it's ever evolving. So let's just start there. So people, you're gonna have to be a little patient on this process because I see there's still a lot of process and steps to be done. But here are some of the nuances that I did want to kind of elevate that I think there's some, just to clear up, to make clarity around who's eligible. Well, how is this going to affect certain households? So if you have a household, let's say a $250,000 salary or less, or if you're single and you're making $125,000 or less, those are the caps for income that's going to be eligible for this process. So let's start with the next requirement. The next requirement to determine how much you're going to be eligible for debt relief is whether or not you received a Pell grant while you were in college. So those who did receive a Pell grant, let's say for instance you're single, you make less than $125,000 a year, and you had a Pell grant while you were in school. That means you're going to receive the maximum of up to $20,000 in relief. Now, the other part that people want to understand, just like any fine print when you're buying a home, buying a car, up to always triggers people. Like, what does that mean? So if your debt is only, let's say, 18,000, that means your whole 18,000 will be wiped out. It will be relieved. There will be no additional $2,000 given to you. You will only receive the debt cancellation up to the amount that you owe. However, if you owe 25,000 and you're receiving the 20, you're still responsible for the $5,000 in debt that belongs to you. So that I know has been one of the biggest conversation pieces about what this up to means. How do I determine if I am eligible or not? So basically, you just look at whether you're single or if you have a household income. Look at the two caps of 125,000 and 250,000. And then if you receive the Pell or not. Now, if you did not receive the Pell grant while you're in college, the cap is at $10,000 relief in debt cancellation. So again, that you have two levels or two tiers of debt cancellation based on those two parameters. And so here's one thing I will say, the process has not started. They are going to open up an application process. They're hoping that a lot of these individuals who qualify, that the Department of Education already has your income information. However, if they do not, they will be releasing an application in the coming weeks for you to fill out, just in case you're not sure if they have your information. I will challenge and actually recommend to anyone who has debt out there, student loans, and you want to make sure that you don't miss this opportunity, and go to ed.gov/subscriptions and subscribe to the debt relief subscription newsletter. This is the best way for you to stay up to date when the application opens, who's qualifying, who's not, and what do you need to do in a timely manner to make sure that you receive this relief that can really be a game changer in your household.
That is all. It's so interesting, Chandra. And also, again, you're kind of breaking down that fine print, that up to. You mentioned if you have $18,000 in debt and you went to school on a Pell Grant, you're not going to get a check for $2,000. That just means that your debt is essentially wiped out and you are, you're clear to go. You can move past go, as we say sometimes. But if you have 25,000, then you're still on the hook for that extra 5,000. So tell me though, these numbers are different if you went to school on a Pell Grant versus if you did not. So why that difference? Why is the amount of money and the amount of loan forgiveness so different between those two things? And also, how do people know if they went to school on a Pell Grant?
Sure. So Pell Grants are usually associated for those who were able to qualify based on their income. So most of the time, those if they were able to receive a Pell Grant, this is a money they did not have to pay back, but it wasn't enough to cover the tuition. So this is why they still had to take out a loan. However, if you apply for college and you did not qualify for the Pell Grant, that just simply means that your income ratio to debt just wasn't there enough for them to see that you needed additional aid. And so your household did not qualify for the Pell Grant, but you still had to take out loans to be able to close the gap for you to attend school. And so that is one reason why I think they set these tiers, because they recognize if you qualified the Pell Grant, that means your challenges were much more higher to be able to go to college than the person who did not qualify for the Pell, because most likely they already had savings in place. They had, a scholarship fund already in place. So the Pell Grant just did not fit for them. They did not qualify for it. But for a student who does not have the savings, who did not have a college fund, the Pell Grant really opened the door for them to be able to go on a post-secondary journey. Again, but we always know that the Pell Grant no longer covers the cost of college anymore. Long time years ago when the Pell Grant was established, it covered nearly 80% of the cost of college. Now you're talking about less than 20% for some colleges that it covers. And so there's a huge gap still remains for students. And so that's how I feel they made this determination about the two tiers, and then the amount of the Pell Grant versus no Pell Grant, and what the amount of debt cancellation would be.
So that's a good point. So essentially, this kind of tier systems make sure to give the most help, give the most student loan forgiveness to the people who needed the most aid in the beginning. Is that fair?
That is fair. That is actually a fair statement. And here's one thing, another thing in our state, I would say alone in Alabama, there are so many who started college and didn't finish, and all they have to show for college is the debt. And so they had the Pell Grant, they had the student loans, but maybe life got in the way and they couldn't finish. And so this debt is just looming over them. It's probably preventing them from buying a home. It's probably preventing them from being able to go back to college to finish, because they're still paying that debt. They can't take on that debt and pay tuition again. So there are many challenges that, adults in our state who definitely fit in this category to hopefully have this debt canceled for them, that this would be a huge benefit in their home.
That's a good point. And I think something too that we need to remember, especially maybe people who haven't been in college in a while, is that a lot of this money is not just tuition. Tuition is outrageous in a lot of places, and tuition is very expensive, but also books are very expensive.
Yes.
Housing is very expensive. Food on campus is very expensive. So there's a lot of things that go into the student loan. It is not just the $5,000 or whichever your school charges for a semester. There's a lot of things that go into this money, or that rather are paid for with this money. Now, one other thing I wanted to touch on and get your thoughts on, Chandra, is this argument we've seen probably, I'm sure most of us have seen online, of people saying this isn't fair. There are people who say, I don't want to have to pay your debt, or you signed on for that debt, you should pay it. So what do you make out of this argument right now of people that are saying that their debt is their responsibility versus the people who say, look, I went to college for XYZ reason, but I needed the help, and now it's time for the government to step in and help me. What is kind of your take on that argument?
So first thing I would say, I don't think there's anyone that woke up in the morning and said, I took on that debt, but it's up to someone else to erase it. I really do feel that to me, it's an unfair statement to say it's not fair that someone is having their debt canceled. We don't know everyone's individual situation. I'm sure there are plenty of people who started this path not saying, that I'm going to start college, not finish, accumulate this debt, and it'll be someone else's problem. I seriously doubt someone, single-handedly made the decision that this was the path that they were going to take. When they enrolled in college, took out that student loan, they had every hope in the world that piece of paper that they were going to receive one day when they were across the stage was going to probably stop generational poverty in their family, was going to make changes for them in their lives and the family they were hoping to build. And so to me, it's just more unfair to make such blanket statements, to assume that individuals just made a decision to take on this debt, with no responsibility to pay it back. Life most likely got in the way. and prevented them. Most likely, they had high challenges to even get to college. Most of the people that I can guarantee, most people that are making that statement did not have the hills to climb to get to their college degree than most of these people that are receiving this debt cancellation. Yes, we all know going to college is a challenge. It is very costly. It's sacrifices you have to make. And I'm pretty sure everyone who took on that journey understood that. They were making challenges. A lot of them probably didn't have food to eat, but they were studying. A lot of them probably didn't have housing. I can't tell you how many college students are homeless. But again, you take on this road of post-secondary attainment because you know it could help you to attain a career that could be life-changing, to give you the salary you need to sustain a livable wage. And so to be able to give relief to the individuals that did all they could, they did all the right things, but life circumstances out of their control prevented them from finishing the course that they started. And I just feel like this is a way for us to possibly give relief to those individuals who I feel deserve it. Of course, we all know there are individuals going to be in that number that we probably feel just kind of just let it go. But that is not what the focus is here. The focus is here about how do we allow people who have been having this debt loom over them for so long, making every payment they could, or tried to in some manner, but somehow this has really prevented them from living the life they tried to live. They probably couldn't buy the home, buy the car, get the job, obviously, that they wanted to have. And that is why they cannot take on this debt now. And relieving that debt, obviously in the end boosts the economy because now they have freed up dollars to invest back into the economy, whether it's buying that home, whether it's going back to school, investing back into themselves, which would be the greatest asset to this, to being able to relieve that looming debt if they can now and invest in themselves. And so I would say for people to just slow down on the quick social media rampages, and look to a neighbor who may obviously be sitting that you may not even realize this debt has really impeded some of the progress they wanted to make. And so just, sometimes take a step back and pause. Yes, you may have been able to pay yours off. That's great. Now this person will feel that same relief when you made that last payment and how great it felt. Now this person is going to be able to experience that same feeling when this debt is counseled for them. And now they can begin to invest in themselves and invest in their family.
That's a good point. I want to circle back to something you said there, especially because we know, again, out of this massive amount of student debt nationwide, that $23.5 billion of that debt
Mhm.
is coming from people in Alabama. That's a
Yes.
big chunk of people in Alabama. About 37,000 is the average student loan debt in Alabama, and a little bit more than 2% of people in Alabama actually owe more than $200,000. It's a lot of money. And I want to circle back to something you said about life getting in the way, because we all know
Mhm.
how that can happen. But first, I have a quick question from a viewer here I want to ask you. And that is, does this apply to people who are still in college, who are still taking classes and had to take out loans in order to get to those classes?
Now, from my understanding, I think this debt is for those who have stopped. And I don't think it applies to those who are currently enrolled. Now, I could be completely wrong on that. Again, this is ever evolving on the parameters around who qualifies for this debt cancellation. But from my understanding, these are for individuals who are not enrolled in the moment. But again, it can truly be a huge help for those who want to come back, because they have this debt looming over them. They're afraid to take on additional debt when they already owe money. Like, who's going to take out another loan when I already owe and I'm having a hard time paying it? And so again, in Alabama alone, with that stark, amount that's looming in our state of debt, just imagine if those individuals were freed up from that debt and how it could truly boost our economy within our state. If those individuals now have dollars that don't have to go straight to this debt that they're having a very hard time paying, and now can possibly participate more at a higher level in our economy.
Absolutely. Again, that 2.1% owing more than 200,000. That's a house right
That's
there.
a
And
house.
Absolutely. And about 21% actually owe 20,000 to 40,000 there. So again, that's a car. That's probably
Yes.
several cars for some people. So some of this debt is stark. And I think that sometimes seeing these figures in black and white really kind of bring it home to
Mhm.
people. Now, I want
Yeah.
to circle back to something you said, and that is about life getting in the way. We know, and I'm sure that a lot of us know, I should say, somebody who started off on their college journey, whether that was for a 2-year college, a 4-year college, or university, and something happened. Life got in the way, as you said, which
Mhm.
it all does for us at some point, right? That
Yes.
person had to either withdraw, had to unenroll, had to stop going to class there. And now, as you mentioned earlier, these are people that are crippled with debt, but also have nothing to show for that debt. How does this help them? I know you said this helps them kind of get that debt off of their shoulders. So if they want to go back to school, they can. Tell me a little bit more about that and about what your group is working with, this program called Reengage Alabama.
Sure. So, of course, having that debt taken off your shoulders, that is such a huge sigh of relief. And you just shared the numbers. I mean, they're amazing to hear, such a high figure of debt in our state. And so just think if you were an adult who started that path, didn't finish because maybe you had to take care of an aging parent. You decided to get married and you got pregnant. And so you had to stop and take care of family. Maybe you were working, lost your job, or your spouse lost their job, so you had to pick up additional hours. And so your school had to take the back seat for the moment. So many scenarios that we can begin naming on and on and on. Just think if I now know I no longer owe $15,000 in debt, now I can take that 15,000 I owed and now apply to going back to school to finish that degree that I never got a chance to finish. I will say that one thing I'm very proud of Alabama about is we weren't necessarily just waiting for a federal answer to help adults see the importance of coming back to school. Just a few weeks ago, the Alabama Commission of Higher Education, our office, Alabama Possible, in partnership with the Governor's Office of Education and Workforce Transformation, all came together and launched what we call Reengage Alabama with our public four-year institutions across our state. And they're all basically gave a resounding yes to we have to be more intentional about how do we re-engage and create better pathways for adults in our state. I mean, we have over 315,000 adults in our state who have some college but no degree. That's a lot of individuals who are walking around our state who most likely life got in the way, ages 25 to 64, and didn't get to finish that journey, but have a debt looming over them. And so just think now we have a federal answer coupled with a state initiative that can now really, really, and I would say increase the likelihood that these barriers to prosperity are going to be a reality being be removed. Now I no longer have the debt. I can now reinvest in myself. Go back to college. Just think when you look at colleges now, you don't see photos on campus that show a mother with a child with books or with a laptop, or a father that has on his military uniform but going to class. You mainly see young adults, most likely fresh out of high school, sitting on a quad or with their sorority or fraternity. And so, college has for so long really been catered to what we like to call the traditional student. But in our state alone, we have almost 21% of our undergraduates were adults. That is a huge percentage of adults that are going back to school in our state. And so, what about the others that cannot afford to go back? And now we can increase the likelihood for them to return. And all of this really, really plays out well into our statewide attainment goal. I mean, if the governor has put forth this goal of 500,000 credentialed Alabamians by 2025, well, if we're going to do that, we have to make sure we're not only looking at traditional students, but also adults. And I can say that the timing of this couldn't be better for Alabama, being that we have our four-year institutions giving a resounding yes to that. They know adults in our state are important, and they want to make sure that they have all the resources and tools they need to be able to come back and finish what they started. Again, it's really just changing the narrative of being a colleges being having the conversation about students being college ready, but now college being students ready, no matter how the age of the student. And now being able to give that student who's an adult that had that debt looming over them, now the journey to be able to return and upskill or reskill themselves, to be able to participate at a higher rate in the booming economy and workforce that we have in our state, no matter what region you live in. And so that's the beauty of this, is that the timing couldn't be better. But again, I can't stress enough for people to be patient. I think I gave you the analogy. It's like you getting a notice in the mail that you want a car, but the car hasn't been built yet. And so it's coming, but you got to wait for the manufacturers to finish building it. And that's the same with this debt cancellation. It's coming. Again, I advise everyone who feels they fit or could possibly fit in this category to receive this debt cancellation to definitely subscribe to the newsletters they're going to continue to send out to let you know when the application opens up, let you know what the process is going to be. And that way you can stay in the loop so you don't miss out on the opportunity. I'm sure there's going to be deadlines that are going to be put in place. And so you don't want to miss that opportunity. So ed.gov/subscriptions to me is the best way that you can stay in the know in what the next steps for yourself and your household could be.
I was just writing down that website, ed.gov/subscriptions to sign up for these subscriptions to sign up for these newsletters so you can know when the applications are open, what you need to do. Chandra, can people who want to get involved, who already know, look, I qualify for this, I'm ready to get that debt canceled out, do they still have to just wait, or is there anything they can do right now to go ahead and start that process?
Yeah, so there's that thing they can do at the moment. From what I'm understanding right now, the United States Department of Education is trying to make sure who all information they already have. They're now working with the president in his office about how the type of information they need to gather from individuals who do not have their debt on their income on file. And so once again, that newsletter is going to be critical to stay up to date. Just alone yesterday, 4 notices came out. And they kept evolving with more and more information. So I can only imagine over the coming weeks when the application is open and is available, that there's going to be tons of information that's going to start pouring out, that's going to help people understand the next step. So again, I cannot stress enough, don't rely on social media, because sometimes it could be factual and it could be not. It's kind of hard to sift through what's true and what's not. Get it straight from the source. Subscribe to that newsletter that's coming straight from their office, that's going to tell you the next steps, what the timeline is going to be, what the deadlines are, and what's going to be required of you. And so again, especially those who are in Alabama, we heard the numbers. Don't miss this opportunity for you to have this debt removed from looming over you and your family. Just get the information you need by subscribing to those newsletters.
Again, that's ed.gov/subscriptions for that information straight to your inbox. Great advice there, and great just breaking it down for us, Chandra, because I know a lot of people, when they saw that announcement, I know I did, I said, what all is in here? This is a little bit confusing. By a little, I mean a lot. So thank you so much for breaking that down. Everybody watching, we're going to leave a lot of links here so you can click on those, learn more information, some from AL.com, and then some, again, where you can get some of this federal information and make sure that you don't miss any type of applications or deadlines there. Everybody watching, thank